The galaxy prided itself on order. Not peace order. Peace was temporary, fragile, dependent on emotion. Order was permanent, measurable, enforced. For nearly 3,000 standard cycles, the Concord Council of Unified Species had ruled the known stars under a single, unyielding principle. Predictability is survival. Anything that disrupted that principle was regulated. Anything that defied it was banned. And humanity was becoming a problem. Earth entered the galactic stage quietly. No grand armada. No declaration of dominance. No ancient empire reclaimed. Just a species that kept fixing things it wasn't supposed to survive. The Council initially welcomed them as a curiosity, a late-blooming civilization with crude aesthetics and chaotic social structures. Their technology lagged behind. Their ships were inelegant. Their weapons lacked refinement. They were categorized as class-developing, assigned observation status, and largely ignored. The first warning sign came during a joint infrastructure trial. A minor council outpost orbiting a dead moon suffered a cascading power failure. An event so rare it was treated more as an inconvenience than a threat. Standard protocol dictated evacuation and system reset. The council engineers followed procedure flawlessly. The station continued to fail. Atmosphere bled away. Gravity stuttered. Life support began to shut down in sections. It should have taken weeks to repair. Human engineers fixed it in 11 hours. They didn't follow the schematics. They didn't replace components. They rerouted. They used spare conduits never intended for energy transfer, bridged incompatible systems with improvised converters, and stabilized the entire station using a feedback loop that technically violated 3 council safety doctrines. When asked how they had done it, the human lead engineer shrugged. "Didn't want anyone to suffocate," she said. "So we made it work." The council archived the incident, then flagged it. Humans did not optimize for elegance. They optimized for survival, and that made them dangerous. The second warning came during a defensive exercise. A council shield array rated impregnable was pitted against simulated threats from multiple species. It performed perfectly, as expected. Then a human tactical officer was invited to observe. Not command, just observe. She watched quietly for nearly an hour, then raised her hand. "What happens if the enemy doesn't care about the shield?" she asked. The chamber fell silent. "That scenario is irrelevant," a council tactician replied. "No rational force would." "What if they're not rational?" the human asked. Permission was granted for a hypothetical. Her simulation broke the shield in 12 minutes. Not with stronger weapons, with persistence. She exploited maintenance cycles, energy recovery gaps, and microdelays between harmonized layers. She didn't overwhelm the system. She tired it out. The shield failed not catastrophically but inevitably. The council ended the session early. Patterns emerged. Human solutions ignored established boundaries. Human tools were adaptable to absurd degrees. Human creativity introduced variables the council could not model. Worst of all, humans taught these methods to others. By the time the Ingenuity Accords were proposed, the decision had already been made. The council convened beneath the great lattice dome of Varelian Prime, where representatives of 87 species floated, perched, or stood in concentric tiers of authority. At the center hovered the council's decree. Human Ingenuity Restrictions, Proposal 7A. The language was clinical, cold, absolute. Human adaptive engineering, the High Arbiter declared, introduces non-deterministic outcomes that compromise galactic stability. A ripple of agreement echoed through the chamber. Therefore, the Arbiter continued, all forms of unsanctioned human innovation are to be restricted. Humans may no longer modify council technology, propose alterations to defensive systems, or introduce non-standard solutions into shared infrastructure. The word ban was never spoken. It didn't need to be. The human delegation listened in silence. Ambassador Elias Monroe stood at the edge of the chamber, hands clasped behind his back, face unreadable. When given permission to speak, he took a single step forward. "With respect," he said calmly, You're banning problem-solving. A low murmur spread. We are regulating chaos, the arbiter replied. Monroe nodded once. Chaos, he said softly, is sometimes just reality knocking. The council was unmoved. The vote passed. Unanimous. Human ingenuity was officially classified as a destabilizing factor, and the galaxy breathed easier. For a while. What the council did not understand, what it could not understand, was that human ingenuity was never a weapon. It was a reflex. When systems failed, humans adapted. When rules broke, humans improvised. When survival was threatened, humans changed the rules entirely. You could ban the tools, but you could not ban the instinct. On Earth, the response was not outrage. It was quiet. Engineers archived designs. Scientists closed shared databases. Human innovation turned inward, not in protest, in preparation. Far from council space, beyond regulated lanes, something ancient stirred. A defensive network older than the Concorde itself. Automated, relentless, and awakening after millennia of silence. Its first target was not a human world. It was a council stronghold. And when the shields began to fail, the council would realize too late what they had forbidden. The first council fortress fell without a battle. That, more than anything else, unsettled them. The stronghold at Caro's Reach had been designed to endure eternity. Its hull was layered with harmonic alloys calibrated to dissipate force. Its shield array rotated frequencies every microcycle, rendering brute force attacks meaningless. Its automated defense platforms were governed by logic cores refined over centuries. There was no room for surprise. That was the point. When the early warning sensors detected the incoming anomaly, the council commanders reacted with calm efficiency. No panic, no hesitation, just protocol. Classification? The fortress overseer asked. Unknown construct, replied the sensor cast. Non-organic. No identifiable command structure. Movement pattern suggests autonomous behavior. A relic, someone muttered. Leftover war machinery. The overseer inclined her crest. Then it will break itself against our defenses. The anomaly did not fire weapons. It did not maneuver aggressively. It simply approached. The shield array engaged at optimal output. Energy flowed cleanly through the lattice. The fortress glowed with the quiet confidence of something that had never been challenged. The anomaly reached the shield boundary and stopped, pressed against the barrier. Not violently, not forcefully, just constantly. First, nothing happened. Then, incremental fluctuations. Minor drain. Negligible. The overseer dismissed them. Maintain output, she ordered. Minutes passed. Then hours. The anomaly did not withdraw. It did not adapt. It did not attack. It simply endured. The shield's energy recovery cycle began to lag. Only by fractions. But fractions added up. Compensate, the overseer ordered. The logic cores complied. 37 hours later, the shield failed. Not explosively, not dramatically, simply went dark. The anomaly drifted through the opening and anchored itself to the fortress hull. Only then did it activate. From across council space, the feeds showed the same thing. The construct did not breach the hull. It did not deploy weapons. It emitted a resonance pulse, precisely tuned to the fortress's internal power grid. A grid that had never been designed to operate without its shields. Caro's Reach went silent. No debris, no survivors, no explosion. Just absence. The council convened within hours. This time, there was no ceremony, only tension. This should not be possible, one elder hissed. Our defenses are absolute. They are optimized, another corrected. Not absolute. The chamber fell quiet. That distinction mattered. Reports streamed in. The anomaly, now designated Sentinel-class remnant, was moving again. Slowly, methodically, toward another council installation. We must adapt, an elder said reluctantly. Then authorize human consultation, another replied. The High Arbiter's eyes narrowed. No, they said. The word cut like ice. The ban remains, the Arbiter continued. Human unpredictability is precisely what destabilized this situation. We will not introduce further variables. A murmur of uncertainty spread. But our current doctrine has served us for millennia, the arbiter snapped. So the council adapted the only way it knew how. They increased output. They reinforced protocols. They refined models. They did everything by the book. The second fortress lasted longer. 5 days. The third lasted 8. Each failure followed the same pattern. No brute force. No clever countermeasures. Just relentless pressure applied at exactly the wrong place for exactly long enough. The models did not account for patience. On Earth, the humans watched. They were not invited to respond. They were not consulted. But Council space traffic was impossible to ignore. Ambassador Monroe stood in a dim briefing room as analysts replayed the footage. "They're burning themselves out," one engineer said quietly. "They're treating endurance like an error," another added. Monroe folded his arms. "They think inevitability favors them," he said. "Does it?" Monroe didn't answer immediately. "No," he said finally. "It favors whoever's willing to stay standing longer." The Sentinel remnant reached Varelian Prime, the Council's heart. Panic erupted. Evacuation was debated and dismissed. To flee, the Arbiter declared, would be to admit imperfection. The Fortress World's defenses activated in full. The strongest shield network ever constructed flared to life. And the galaxy watched. The Sentinel arrived. And stopped. Hours passed. Then days. Energy reserves dipped. Then recovered. Then dipped again. The Council's best minds worked tirelessly, adjusting frequencies, rebalancing loads, following doctrine. A junior tactician, barely authorized to speak, whispered a forbidden thought. "This resembles human siege behavior." The chamber froze. "Explain," the Arbiter demanded. "They don't rush," the tactician said. "They wait. They endure. They let systems fail themselves." Silence. The Arbiter's gaze hardened. "That is precisely why they were banned." The shield faltered. Just a little. And somewhere on Earth, a human engineer leaned back in her chair and sighed. "They're about to learn," she said softly. The shield over Varelian Prime did not fail all at once. It hesitated. That hesitation, a fraction of a second where energy distribution lagged, was enough to terrify the Concord Council. For the first time in recorded history, inevitability blinked. Alarms rippled through the lattice city that encircled the planet's upper atmosphere. Automated systems compensated instantly, rerouting power, reinforcing weak points, correcting inefficiencies before they could cascade. Everything worked, and yet, the Sentinel did not leave. It hung against the shield like a thought that would not go away. It did not strike. It did not maneuver. It did not respond. It simply endured. "We are expending too much energy maintaining full output," one systems overseer reported. "That is acceptable," the High Arbiter replied. "We will outlast it." A dangerous assumption. On Earth, the decision was made without ceremony. There was no emergency broadcast. No dramatic declaration. Just a quiet meeting in a reinforced room beneath Geneva's rebuilt skyline. "We can help them," Engineer Rhea Calder said, pointing at the live feed of Varelian Prime. "They don't see it, but they're overcorrecting. Their own doctrine is hurting them. And they banned us," a defense official replied flatly. "Yes," Rhea said. "They did." She leaned forward. "But that doesn't mean we stop being who we are." Ambassador Monroe listened without interrupting. When the room fell silent, he spoke. "If we intervene," he said, "they'll see it as confirmation of their fears. And if we don't," Rhea replied, "they'll lose their capital." Monroe closed his eyes briefly, then nodded. "Prepare a solution," he said. "No weapons, no control, just help." The human proposal violated every council restriction. So they didn't send it through council channels. They sent it around them. A narrowband transmission, piggybacked on civilian traffic protocols, slipped through automated filters and reached the outer defense layer of Varelian Prime. It was not labeled as human. It was labeled as Structural Advisory Packet. Inside the council chamber, a systems analyst hesitated. This signal contains unapproved modifications, they reported. Source? The arbiter demanded. Unclear, the analyst said. But it addresses the exact failure point we're seeing. The arbiter's mandibles tightened. Ignore it. Minutes passed. The shield output dipped again. Longer this time. If we do nothing, the analyst said carefully, the sentinel will not break us. The chamber leaned in. We will break ourselves. The arbiter stared at the hovering advisory packet. Human ingenuity, banned and quarantined. A variable. Chaos. Run it, the arbiter said. Quietly, the modifications were deceptively simple. Reduce peak output. Introduce controlled inefficiency. Allow the shield to breathe. Felt wrong. It worked. The shield stabilized. Energy consumption dropped. Feedback loops normalized. The sentinel remained, but its effect diminished. For the first time since arrival, the fortress was no longer bleeding itself dry. The council stared in stunned silence. That solution, an elder said slowly, was not elegant. No, the analyst replied. It was human. On Earth, Rhea Calder watched the data stabilize and let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. They'll hate that it worked, she murmured. Monroe smiled faintly. They already did, he said. The sentinel did not retreat, but it stopped winning. Days passed, then weeks. The construct remained, patient and unmoving, and the council realized a terrible truth. They were locked in a contest not of force, but of endurance. Humans understood endurance, not as doctrine, but as lived experience. A second advisory packet was sent, then a third, each one anonymous, each one helpful, each one human. Council engineers began waiting for them. They didn't say so aloud, but they watched the data channels, hoped. The humans remain unpredictable, the arbiter warned. Yes, an elder replied quietly, but they are also choosing not to abandon us. That observation lingered. The sentinel began to degrade, not because it was attacked, but because the shield no longer fed it failure. Its resonance cycles lost effectiveness. Its patience, finite after all, ran out. One cycle later it detached, drifted, and vanished into the dark. Varelian Prime stood, saved by the very ingenuity it had forbidden. No celebration followed, only reckoning. The council convened again. This time the chamber felt smaller. The High Arbiter addressed the assembly with visible strain. We must discuss, they said, the matter of humanity. Far away on Earth, Ambassador Monroe received a single encrypted message. Request for dialogue. He read it once, then twice, then allowed himself a slow smile, because the council had finally realized something fundamental. You could ban human ingenuity, but when survival was on the line, you needed it. The Concord Council had faced wars before. They had faced extinction-level threats. They had faced internal schisms and external invasions. What they had never faced was doubt. The chamber on Varelian Prime felt different now. Quieter. Not because fewer voices were present, but because fewer spoke with certainty. The High Arbiter floated at the center of the lattice, posture rigid, mandibles drawn tight in controlled restraint. The Sentinel threat has withdrawn, they announced. Our defenses hold. No one cheered, because everyone knew the truth. They held because of human ingenuity. Ambassador Elias Monroe was escorted into the chamber under full diplomatic protocols. No shackles, no intimidation, no elevation, just an even path across polished crystal flooring. He noticed the details, how guards stood a little farther back than before, how eyes lingered longer, how no one interrupted when he stopped to look around. The council was no longer looking down at humanity. They were looking at it. You violated the Ingenuity Accords, the Arbiter said. Monroe nodded once. Yes, the word echoed. No excuses, no justification, just acknowledgement. You transmitted unauthorized solutions into council defense systems. the Arbiter continued. Yes, you introduced variables that could have destabilized our capital. Yes. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. The Arbiter leaned forward. Why? Monroe met the Arbiter's gaze. Because, he said evenly, you were going to lose everything trying to be perfect. Silence. A senior engineer spoke hesitantly. The human solutions were inefficient. Monroe smiled faintly. They were, he agreed. They wasted energy, allowed margin for error, accepted imperfections. He paused. They also worked. The Arbiter bristled. You risked galactic stability. Monroe tilted his head. No, he said. We risked being wrong. That struck harder than accusation. A junior delegate, one of the newer species, spoke up. You helped us, they said quietly. Even after we restricted you. Monroe looked at them. That's what we do, he said. Not proudly. Simply factually. The council reviewed the data again. Not the results. The process. Human designs were messy, adaptable, full of redundancies that served no clear purpose. Except one. They allowed failure without collapse. We optimize until there is nothing left to give, an elder murmured. And then we are surprised when systems fail. Monroe listened but did not interrupt. This was their realization to have. The Arbiter's voice lowered. If human ingenuity were unrestricted, they asked, what would prevent chaos? Monroe considered the question carefully, then answered. Nothing, he said. A collective inhale. But chaos, he continued, is not the absence of control. It's the presence of choice. That answer unsettled them, because choice could not be modeled. Reports began to arrive from across council space. Other systems had faced minor anomalies, supply failures, localized crises. Human advisory packets, once quietly tolerated, were now actively requested. Not publicly, not officially, but urgently. The ban still existed, but it was no longer obeyed. The council attempted to reinforce doctrine, but doctrine had lost its authority, because everyone now knew, when the models failed, humans stayed. A second sentinel remnant was detected at the edge of known space. Larger, more complex, not approaching yet. Waiting. Fear returned. But this time it was different. The council did not ask if their defenses were sufficient. They asked a different question. Should we involve the humans? The Arbiter closed their eyes. Centuries of certainty weighed heavily. Summon them, they said. And with those two words, the ban on human ingenuity collapsed. Not officially, but completely. On Earth, the message arrived with no fanfare. Full consultation authorized. Rhea Calder read it twice, then laughed. A tired, disbelieving sound. They finally blinked, she said. Monroe nodded. They didn't just blink, he replied. They trusted. Human teams mobilized. Not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as problem solvers. They studied sentinel behavior not as enemies, but as systems, patterns, limits, fatigue. This thing isn't infinite, Rhea said during a briefing. It just assumes we are. The plan that emerged was not elegant. It was not clean. It was not something the council would ever have designed. It relied on endurance, on cooperation, on letting the sentinel exhaust itself, while humanity refused to rush. As preparations spread across the stars, something else spread too. Hope. Not because humanity was powerful, but because they were willing to stay. The galaxy watched, waiting to see whether ingenuity, once banned, would be enough to shatter what inevitability could not. The second sentinel did not rush the galaxy. It did not need to. It moved like something that understood patience as a weapon. It emerged from interstellar darkness at the edge of council space. Vast, asymmetrical, its surface scarred by ancient purpose. Where the first sentinel had tested endurance, this one observed. It adjusted. It learned. And that terrified the Concord Council more than brute force ever could. This construct is adaptive, the Arbiter said quietly as projections filled the chamber. It will not repeat previous failures. Rhea Calder stood among council engineers, human and alien alike, arms crossed, eyes scanning the data. Good, she said. Several heads turned. Why is that good? An elder demanded. Because, Rhea replied, if it can learn, it can get tired of learning. Confusion rippled outward. Human ingenuity did not attempt to overpower the Sentinel. It didn't seek a decisive blow. Instead, it proposed something deeply uncomfortable to the council. Let it in. Not fully, not recklessly, but deliberately. We don't meet it at the shield, Monroe explained during the joint briefing. We don't drain ourselves proving we're unbreakable. We let it interact, Rhea added. We give it feedback loops that don't collapse but don't resolve either. The council recoiled. You would weaken our defenses, the arbiter said. No, Rhea replied calmly. We would flex them. The plan was heresy. Human engineers proposed layered defenses designed to fail safely. Zones meant to degrade. Systems built to recover instead of resist absolutely. To the council, it felt like inviting disaster. To humanity, it felt like home. We grew up with systems that broke, Monroe said quietly. Power grids, governments, bodies. He looked around the chamber. We survived by learning how to keep going anyway. The Sentinel advanced. Slowly, purposefully. As it reached the first defensive perimeter, something unexpected happened. The shields did not flare. They yielded. Energy bled off in controlled arcs. The Sentinel pressed, and found nothing to push against. Confused, if such a thing could be said of a machine, it adjusted its output. Increased pressure. Shifted resonance. The defenses adapted with it. Not opposing. Responding. Hours turned into days. The Sentinel worked harder. The defenses worked smarter. Not stronger. Energy draw is stable, an analyst reported. Sentinel output is increasing, another said. Rhea nodded. Good, she murmured. It's getting frustrated. The construct began deploying secondary systems. Probes, substructures, recursive attack patterns. Each met resistance, not absolute, but persistent. Each required recalibration. Each demanded attention. The Sentinel had been built to overwhelm inevitability. It was not built to negotiate with refusal. For the first time, the Council saw something unprecedented. The Sentinel began to hesitate. Its movements slowed. Its patterns repeated. Its adaptations narrowed. It was burning energy not against a wall, but against something that would not stay still. This defies doctrine, an elder whispered. Yes, Monroe replied softly. That's the point. Then the Sentinel made a mistake. Committed fully. A massive energy surge rippled outward, designed to collapse every adaptive layer at once. Human systems absorbed it, bled, bent, and then recovered. The Sentinel's core dimmed. Its vast form drifted. Uncertain. Now? The Arbiter asked. Rhea shook her head. Now we wait. Hours passed. Then days. The Sentinel did not attack again. It remained, dormant, a machine without a solution. Finally, it shut down. Not destroyed, not conquered, just finished. Across council space, a single realization spread. The greatest defense humanity had offered was not a weapon. It was a mindset. They did not demand perfection. They planned for failure. They did not chase certainty. They prepared for change. The Arbiter addressed the chamber, voice heavy with something unfamiliar. Human ingenuity was banned because it introduced chaos, they said. They paused. It turns out, chaos was what saved us. The ban was formally repealed. Not rewritten, repealed. Human ingenuity was no longer classified as destabilizing. It was reclassified as essential. Rhea Calder stood on a balcony overlooking Varelian Prime, watching the Sentinel's inert silhouette drift into disposal orbit. Monroe joined her. They'll never build defenses the same way again, he said. She smiled faintly. Good, she replied. Neither will we. But the galaxy had one lesson left to learn, because ingenuity alone had not won this battle. What had truly shattered the Sentinels was humanity's refusal to believe that survival required becoming something less than itself. And somewhere among the stars, species long silenced began to wonder if endurance could be chosen, if failure could be survived, if meaning mattered more than certainty. Because humanity had not just defended the galaxy, they had taught it how to endure. The Sentinels' remains drifted silently beyond the edge of Council space. No victory parade followed. No monuments were raised. The galaxy did not celebrate with noise. It exhaled. For the Concord Council, survival brought no triumph, only reckoning. Their doctrines still existed. Their institutions still stood. But certainty was gone, and it would never return. In the weeks that followed, Council engineers rewrote centuries of design philosophy. Not to imitate humans, but to learn from them. Systems were rebuilt with margins, with redundancies that served no purpose until they did, with allowances for error, for interruption, for the unexpected. The galaxy's defenses became less elegant and far more resilient. The High Arbiter requested a private audience with Ambassador Monroe. No attendance, no recorders, just two figures beneath the endless geometry of Varelian Prime. "You changed us," the Arbiter said. Monroe shook his head. "No," he replied. "You listened." The Arbiter considered that. "Why?" they asked. "Why help us after we banned what made you valuable?" Monroe looked out across the city. Lights flickered imperfectly, human-modified systems now woven everywhere. "Because," he said, "we've been on the other side of that decision." The Arbiter turned toward him. And we remember who stayed." Human ingenuity spread across the stars, not as dominance, but as presence. Human advisors arrived in systems recovering from collapse. Human engineers rebuilt stations no one thought salvageable. Human medics worked beside species who had once feared them. They did not bring answers. They brought methods. Across the galaxy, cultures began to change. Children were taught not just how systems worked, but how they failed. Not just how to follow rules, but how to adapt when rules broke. On Earth, Rhea Calder stood in a workshop that smelled of oil and ozone, watching a young apprentice struggle with a stubborn power relay. "Don't fight it," she said gently. "Listen to it." The apprentice frowned. "It's broken." Rhea smiled. "Everything is," she said. "That's how you learn where to start." Years passed. The Concord Council remained, but it no longer ruled by inevitability. It governed by cooperation. Historians would later argue about the moment the galaxy truly changed. Some would say it was the first Sentinel's arrival. Others would point to the repeal of the Ingenuity Accords. But those who had lived through it knew better. The change began the moment humanity was told no, and chose not to walk away. They had been banned, restricted, dismissed, and still they stayed. They stayed when it was easier to let the galaxy burn. They stayed when gratitude was uncertain. They stayed when success was not guaranteed. Not because they were stronger, but because endurance was part of who they were. In the final address of his tenure, the High Arbiter spoke words that would echo for generations. "We believed perfection was strength," he said. "We believed control ensured survival." He paused. "We were wrong." The chamber listened. "Strength," the Arbiter continued, "is the willingness to bend without breaking. And survival," he concluded, "belongs to those who endure change without surrendering meaning." The galaxy remembered that, because humanity had taught it not how to conquer, not how to dominate, but how to keep going. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. If the story moved you, subscribe HFY Story Vault for more human stories from the stars.